We'll have a short recap of the things that we have read in the previous class, in our Zoom class. As we said, this story happened during the World War One, which was waged. World War One was waged between the British and the Germans, and it happened in 1914. And as we said, the Fritz were the British, the German. The Fritz have been nicknamed as German for the German army, and Tommy is a nickname for the British army. And whenever we say Fritz, always remember that it's a German. We mean it for the German army, and Tommy for the British army. And on that day, on Christmas Day, the Fritz, they waved a white flag. They wanted to be friends just for that day, and they had a good party. And then after the party, someone brought up to play football, and the coats, the gray coats belonged to the German army, and the khaki coats belonged to the British army. And those piles of coats were used as goalposts here, and they were supposed to be playing football. And while they played, as we said, Jim McPherson was the captain of the Tommies, and Hans Wolf was the captain for the Fritz. They were both alongside their army, and they were cheering for them. They were clapping their hands, stamping their feet, cheering for their own people, and they were having fun amongst the war. And the air was good between them, and even Hans Wolf, as he said here, that we should resolve the war this way, by playing football, because in football match no one dies, and no children are orphans, no wives become widows. I prefer cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning probably. We laughed at that, and together we watched the game. Sad to say, Connie, Fritz won, 2-1. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs, so it wasn't quite fair. It means that Hans Wolf was being friendly and saying that their goal was wider than theirs. That is the only reason that they had won the game. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished, the schnapps and the rum and the sausage had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides, Hans Wolf said. Take care, Jim McPherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly. I felt that. He turned to wave just once, and then became one of the hundreds of grey-coated men drifting back towards their trenches. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol, and singing it quite beautifully. It was Still Night, means Silent Night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus of while shepherds watched. We exchanged carols for a while, and then we all fell silent. We had had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. And so, at the game, we said that the Fritz won. And the time was quite short. Even though they had the whole day, the time was very short for them because it had been a long time since they had fun. They were only paying attention to their to the war that they were fighting, and the sausage, the game, the rum, the schnapps, everything ran out, and so it means that everything was over. The fun day was over. They wished each other well. They said they wished each other well, saying that they would be able to finish the war well, and then at the end they would be all able to meet with their greet with their family again, alive. And that's what every soldiers wish for whenever they fight a war. And when the night came out, and now the Fritz, the German army, they went back to their own trenches, and like we said, they played the game in no man's land. It wasn't the Fritz land, or nor it was the Tommy's land. They played in the no man's land, and they all drifted back to their own trenches. And at night, in their dugouts, the Fritz, they started singing Silent Night. And hearing them singing, the Tommies, they were also replying to them with a song called While Shepherds Watch. They are both Christmas carols, and they exchanged their carols for a while until they fell asleep. It was a time of peace and goodwill which they hadn't experienced for a while now, and it was going to be a treasure for them and they would always remember that day for as long as they live, I believe. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. Your loving Jim. So this is the letter that was there in the black tin box in the roll-top desk. Now let's go to the third comprehension. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, remember that this letter was from Jim to Connie, but it was read by the author, since the author found it in the roll-top desk that he bought from the junk shop. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beaches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burned-out shell. The roof gapping, the windows boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. Macpherson. Oh yes, said the old man in his slippers. He knew her well. A lovely old lady, he told me. A bit muddle-headed. A bit muddle-headed means she was a bit confused. Her mental was not in the right state. But at her age, she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. She had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The fireman had got her out just in time. She was in a nursing home now. He told me, Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. And so, remember in the envelope there was Mrs. Macpherson, that is Connie's address. And so the author, out of courtesy, or I don't know how he felt when he read it, he wanted to meet Connie. So he goes to the address that was there on the envelope, and then it seems that there was no sign of Connie. Hardly anyone knew her, and the house that she was supposed to be in looked like, from outside we could make out that like no one was there and it was just an empty house. But there was a man, an old man next to the house, who said that he knew about Connie and that she was muddle-headed. She was not in the right mental state of mind, and she then while she was in the house, it seems that a fire broke out, and a fire which was caused due to the candle that she used to light, because she was an old woman and she might have been a bit like stingy type of person, because how old people are. And then she preferred to use the candle instead of the electricity, because she thought that electricity was too expensive to be used. And luckily she was saved by the firemen, and she was admitted in a nursing home in Burlington House, which is in Burlington House on Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. That was what the old man knew about Connie. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway, and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. I said I was a friend to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining hall where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not in with the others, she told me. She is rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. She has no family, no one visits, so I'm sure she'll only be too pleased to see you. She took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. So he goes to the nursing home in the hope of meeting Connie, and it seems that everyone was having like a party, a Christmas party, because everyone had the paper hats, and even the matron had on the paper hats for the party. And the matron even offered the author a mince pie. And while they walked along the corridor, the matron told the author that Mrs. Macpherson was not in with the others, and that she's rather confused that day. She's not in her right mental state on that day, and it's best that she had a good rest. So that is the reason that she wasn't with the others, and she has no family. She used to have no visitors, and she must be very pleased to see you. And then the matron takes the author towards to Connie's room. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into a wispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden. "Hello," I said. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. "Happy Christmas, Connie," I went on. "I found this. I think it's yours." As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I had found it, and I don't think she was listening. For a while she said nothing but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. From the way she was behaving, we can make out, from her behavior on receiving that black tin box with the letter, the way she was stroking the letter, we can make out how much she had missed her husband. Suddenly she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You told me you'd come home by Christmas, dearest," she said. "Here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down." And she reached out and took the author's hand, mistaking the author to be Jim, her husband, who she might have lost in the war. So she was very happy to see him, and said that he was the best Christmas present in the world, and asked him to sit beside her. I sat down beside her, and she kissed my cheek. "I read your letter so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me, and now you are, and you're back. And now you're back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I'd love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some tea. I've made you a nice Christmas cake, marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. And so the author sits down beside her. She kissed his cheek, thinking that it was Jim all along, asking him to read out the letter to her again, because she wanted to hear his voice so much and she missed him. And she was all in illusion, thinking that he was Jim and that she was still able to make those marzipan, the Christmas cake that, remember, that she had made for Jim during the World War I. That was the end of the story. So we can make out now. I think everybody can understand who is the best Christmas present. The best Christmas present might be the author for Connie, because Connie was, like we said, she was in illusion, thinking that her husband was still alive, that they were all well and good. And so that is the end of story. And in the next class we will be doing all the working with the text, working with the language. And while that time, I want you to go through and read the story again, try to understand, see if there is any words that you do not understand, underline them, and try to find out their meanings from your own dictionaries. And read the story at least thrice if you can, and see how beautiful the story is about. And next class we will be doing the rest of the exercises at the back of the book. Thank you, class.